Hello, my name is Ryan Wolfe, and I'm the president of Ability Ministry. Thanks for tuning in again to another one of our training videos. Today we'll be talking about autism, what autism is and what maybe autism is not. What this video is not meant to be is not meant to be a diagnostic tool for you to diagnose autism. It is also not meant to be a video where we're giving you strategies to use when working with someone with autism. We'll do that video in the very near future. What this is simply a 101 level, what is autism? Okay, let's get started. First of all, let's take a look at the prevalence of autism. The CDC recently in 2008 came out with a study that said 1 in 59 children will be diagnosed with autism. When you look at the differences of diagnosing boys versus girls, we've found that boys get diagnosed 4 times more often than girls with autism. So what is autism? Autism is a spectrum disorder. It is a developmental disability that can cause significant social, communication, and behavioral challenges. The learning, thinking, and problem-solving abilities of a person with autism can range from gifted to severely challenged. And some people with autism need a lot of help in their daily lives, while others need less. The operative word here is spectrum. And when thinking of a spectrum, I like to use this illustration. I saw this at a conference years ago, and it made a lot of sense to me. You see, when you have a spectrum of colors, on one end it may be much lighter, and another end it's much more concentrated or darker. When you think of being on the autism spectrum, someone that's on the autism spectrum is somewhere along the spectrum. Maybe here, or maybe here. Some are more significantly impacted by their diagnosis than others. And an important thing to understand is if you know one person with autism, you know one person. Everyone's different because they're somewhere else on that spectrum. And we shouldn't assume that because we know one person, we know all people with autism, because everyone is a little bit different. So if we look at more of a textbook definition from the DSM-5, the DSM-5, when making diagnosis of autism, would focus on 2 different areas of impairment. The first area is in social communication and interaction. So if we look a little bit further down into that, what does that mean? We're looking at things like social reciprocity. So how someone responds to someone else in a relationship. Joint attention, wanting to do something together or have a shared interest, playing together. Whether it be nonverbal communication, using or interpreting nonverbal communication. Social relationships, developing and maintaining friends is another thing to look at. The second area that the DSM-5 would look at would be things like restricted or repetitive behaviors, interests, or activities. Things like lining up toys, flapping hands, or imitating. Things like being fixed on certain routines. So you have to do everything in the same order, or you have to go the same way to work or school every day, or being consumed with restrictive thinking or specific knowledge. Being things like, for example, someone who's just fixated on everything there is to know about a vacuum cleaner, or everything there is to know about a certain Disney movie or a character within that movie, being fixated on that. These are some of the things that you'll look at from the diagnostic perspective. What I want to also focus on is what autism is not. Autism is not something that you grow out of. It is a part of who you are. It's a part of how God has made you. And God has made us on purpose, for a purpose, which is an awesome thing. Autism is not bad. I think we hear the word disorder, and sometimes we think negative thoughts, but autism is not something that is bad. It's not something that needs to be cured, because it's not bad. It's how God has made people on purpose for a purpose. And also it's something that should not be feared. Again, I think from a volunteer's perspective at a church, or a church leader that hears that they have a child on the autism spectrum in their classroom, they may come to it with fear, but my caution is don't fear something that's not bad or doesn't need cured. So it's something that God has created on purpose, for a purpose. So if you look at some early identification signs, things will pop up like lack of or delay in spoken language, repetitive use of language and or motor mannerisms, little or no eye contact, lack of interest in peer relationships, lack of make-believe play, or persistent fixation on certain objects. Again, if you're a ministry volunteer, it is not your job to diagnose. That is the job of a medical professional working with a family. If a family were to approach you and ask you if you've observed these things, you could relay that information in a positive way with the family. But it is not your job, nor is it ever your job to diagnose someone. Okay? So what causes autism? There are a lot of different theories out there, but there's no one cause of autism that has been found yet. Research does suggest that a combination of genetic or non-genetic and environmental influences do make a play in it. But one thing that we know definitively is that vaccinations don't cause autism. That does not cause autism. While genetics will probably play a part in it, it's not been determined yet. Well, it's one thing for me to tell you about autism, someone who doesn't have autism, but it's a whole other thing for me to allow one of my friends to speak to you about what autism is all about. So that's why I've invited my good friend Nick to join us today. So Nick, come on and have a seat. We're so excited that you're here today with us.
Yes.
Nick is a good friend of mine. He's done some things for us before, so you may have seen him or be familiar with Nick. If not, I want to introduce you to him now as a good friend and also someone who has been diagnosed with autism. So again, it's one thing for me to tell you what autism is all about, but it's a whole other thing for me to allow my friend Nick to talk to you about what is autism from his perspective. So Nick, how would you answer that question? What is autism to you?
Autism to me is just a little hard communicating, and it's just, I do things a little bit different. Like it takes me a little bit longer to do things, but I do this exact same things as other people. It just takes me a little bit longer.
Okay, so you would highlight communication and maybe processing things as kind of where you're at on the spectrum with autism.
Yeah, I just think when somebody asks me that, I often use this analogy. My mind races 100 miles per hour, and I only have a little bit of window to access what I have. Regular people like Ryan that doesn't have autism, they can access their memory almost constantly. But with me, I only have a short amount of window, so I just try to access it when need be, and of course I'm on medication that helps me do that, and it slows my mind down enough that I can, when somebody asks me a question, I can get in that little window and I can answer the question.
Awesome.
It may take me a little bit longer, but
Nick, that's a great kind of picture and way of seeing kind of what you're thinking. And so thank you for explaining that to us. Can I ask you another question?
Yes.
All right. So my next question would be this. How was it like growing up with autism? Can you talk maybe briefly about your experience of growing up with autism?
Well, almost 29 years. But my earlier years, it just was rough because I just didn't get along with people. People made fun of me because, there's something different about him. Oh, he repeats, or he does this, or his mind is not working. Like, wow. and so then they make fun of me. But then later on, I went to a school. This is after the No Child Left Behind Act. It's good and it's bad because it mainstreams everybody, but some people like me have a hard time adjusting with things. So my teacher said to my mom, "You're gonna want to pull out Nick because they're mainstreaming everybody and he can't learn, he can't remember things like other people can." So she took me out of public school and she put me into a private school. It's Summit Academy. It's really good because they're really based on autism and people with ADHD. But I had meltdowns. Meltdowns aren't really pleasant because it's just overwhelming. Our fuses aren't that long, so when somebody makes fun of somebody, like for instance, there was a time at Summit Academy that somebody made fun of my mom. Well, that was before I kind of knew how to adjust my thing. Yeah, I've kind of exploded, and that wasn't pretty. So
growing up had its challenges.
Yes.
Had its challenges.
Stressful too.
And it also for you took a lot of work, right? To be able to understand. Okay, I have autism. Here are some things I can work on.
Yeah. Stress level.
Yeah. So it was a challenge, but you've done a great job with, like you said, help of family.
Yes.
Help of schools.
Yes. And medication.
So you've been able to really be super productive. I mean, you drove your car here today. You have a steady job. I think you may have more than one job now.
No, not yet.
Not yet, but I'm hearing that you might be having another job. So
yeah.
So you're doing a great job.
Yeah. And what's really cool is when someone comes up to me and said, "Hey, do you know what this product is?" It may take me a little bit longer, but I'm like, and you see me with hand movements or like clicking my fingers, that's just me, another way of me thinking. And then I can be like, "Oh, it's here on this shelf on the left-hand side." And people look at me and like, "What?" I'm like,
because you have the ability to see it, and maybe that's how your brain maybe works differently than someone else at the grocery store. So, which is really cool. Well, Nick, I've got one more question for you, and really the people that are going to be watching this video will be maybe volunteers at churches, ministry leaders that are interested in knowing a little bit more about autism. So, my last question is this: what advice would you give someone who's working with someone with autism, maybe in their church, whether it be in a children's ministry, a student ministry environment, or maybe even an adult ministry environment? What advice would you give to someone working with someone with autism?
Well, if you see someone with autism and you see someone having a meltdown, like screaming, like there's so many different ways. I would highly suggest you not getting really close to him, because some people, I think it's called like tactile, and the whole touch. If you touch somebody that has autism or anything on the spectrum, they freak out. It's much worse. Like, it can, like, potentially cause harm. And honestly, we don't intend to hurt people, but it's how God wired our minds, our system, that it's just something we can't help. And it's something that is just different with us. And I would just say, try to keep us in a quiet space, and yeah, maybe just try to keep everybody calm and collect. I mean, it's nothing to worry about. Normally it just takes a few minutes. Sometimes it may take longer, but then we just are like, oh.
So I think I hear you say, Nick, is that it's important to get to know everyone that has autism.
Yes.
Because everyone's different, right? Somebody may react differently than somebody else with autism. I'm also hearing you say it's important to be patient.
Yes.
Right? It's important to accept and love everyone, whether you have autism or not. Right?
Yes.
Because God loves everyone.
Yeah.
Right? God's created everyone differently, and that's a wonderful and a beautiful thing. So we should view people the same way that God views people. Well, Nick, thank you for coming on this video and giving your kind of personal take on autism and what it means to you. Thank you for the advice
Yes.
that you've given, and I really appreciate that. For the people watching the video, if they want to do further research, there's a lot of great information out there, whether it be places like the CDC, the Autism Society, or Autism Speaks. Those are some great places to get some further information. And like I said, we'll also be adding more videos soon on strategies on working with people with autism. Maybe we'll have Nick come back and share some more on a video like that.
Yeah.
And there will be more information on our website. As always, keep checking back each month for new training videos. Thanks so much for tuning in this month.